If you guys want to know the kind of morning I'm having, I'm literally blowing crumbs off of my computer because there's crumbs all over my computer because I'm a disgusting mess. Hey, real quick, I'm going to turn the lights on real quick, and here's why. I want to be able to see faces because I want to sort of strike an agreement here before we get started. Every now and then it feels like housekeeping. Lacey texted me after the first service. She goes, "It was fine. It wasn't too mean, but you have this tendency to come across meaner the second time." So I'm on a warning. I've been warned to not be too mean when I say this. I at a selfish level, I love being loved. I love it. I love having a place where I feel like I belong, where I can contribute. I think everybody is that way universally. It does seem for some reason in the last 10 days that we've started getting this question a lot. Is it live this week? And any sort of like, hey, that's not, what? Why is that important? Well, Jordan, so again, nice Jordan. Here's nice Jordan. Jordan, you're just loved. Let me say this. I feel very called, specifically, it's a mission that I feel like we are collectively on, in essence, to build a boat, in a sense. Like when somebody comes by, they're like, "Hey, Jordan, what are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm still literally building this exact same boat that we've been working on for 10 years. For 10 years, we're building this same boat." And so when somebody comes by and they're like, "Jordan, I just love you." And you're like, "Oh, that's awesome, thank you." And they're like, "But I don't like your boat." You're like, "Well, I don't feel loved in that." Like what makes me like to feel loved, I love nothing more than when somebody comes by and they go, "Jordan, how you doing?" I'm like, "Good." And they're like, "Hey, can we help with the boat? Because we believe in this boat also." That makes me feel loved. So when someone's like, "Is that live?" You're not doing that out of love. We're doing that out of just kind of whininess. It's kind of a whiny question, because what you're saying is, I have a preference and I want other people to care about my preference as much as I care about my preference, and I just want to rip a Band-Aid off. We all like live. We all like live. But here comes the Band-Aid. We don't care about your preference. Here's why. Now let me clear. This is why Lacey's like, "You have to be nice." But here's why. Here's why it matters. There are people that you know and that I know. There are names and faces and lives and families and legacies represented in the people that do not come to this church. And by doing this way, what we're saying is we're honoring the gap between where people are and where people could be. And so instead of saying, when you bridge this gap and you walk into our church, we'll give you the gospel, what we're saying is you are absolutely invited to stay right where you're at. We will package it in such a way that is a little less comfortable for us on your behalf. Because it's a little less comfortable, we will package that in a way that we can deliver it to you, what? Where you are. That's the mission, that's the vision, that's the boat that we're building. And I would like to remind you, it was also the method that God used to really honestly salvage Shiloh during a time where we couldn't gather in public. So like I said, please hear my heart. Is it live? Just don't ask me that. Because I don't think that it's honest. I think what you're saying is, me. It's not recorded. You can't prove that I said that. But like I said, if it helps. I like it live better too. For the record, I like it live better too. But Shiloh has grown beyond anybody's me, and it is fully settled into collectively a we. Do you understand what I'm saying? Nobody gets their full preference on everything that happens around here. No one, even me. There are even things about this church. If I got my preference, I would love other things. Like I like live better. You're not alone. Okay. I got a third of the way through my notes, first service. And I feel like if I get a third of the way through my notes in the second service, we're going to be doing good. Here's the problem. The days are longer, the sun is out, the sun is shining, and if you're like me, I have this tendency, and bear with me, to be like, I'm too happy for church right now. I didn't realize I was dealing with such a holy bunch of people. You guys are, hopefully I'll catch up to you, but I'm just admitting where I'm at. Is like, there's things going on and there's distractions and things are good. And like, if you're like me, and I think maybe you might be, even if you're not admitting it, there's like, you have this moment where like Jesus gets brought up and you're like, I know, but like the ditches need burned and there's brandings in the yard. And I know people who are like, this is their garden time and there's just things happening right now. So don't act all judgy. I know they're all a little this way. Here's what I have discovered, and I dread where I'm going with this, because at a personal level, I'm giving too much validity to an animal that I very specifically don't like. My son, who I very much like, has a dog that I very much do not like. It's a dog named Doughnut, and it's a bird dog, and it is aggressively stupid. Aggressively stupid. Like it pursues stupidity. It sees stupidity as an opportunity. And so when we're doing what we're doing, like I've got my dogs, and my dogs, of course everybody thinks their dogs are good, but I've got good dogs. And so we're out gathering steers, and you can send these dogs any direction you want them to go. You can tell them which pen they want to go to. And they're pretty good. They're not trial dogs, but they're good, and they do what I need them to do. And Jet conned me at 9 years old to agreeing to something so far into the future I thought it would never happen, and then it happened. Our dog that's a year old named Doughnut has had the name Doughnut for 3 years, because for 2 years he talked about Doughnut as though she existed before she did. Very true story. So Doughnut, she's got this hairy face. She's a poodle pointer. She's got this hairy face, these hairy dumb legs, and she's got this stupid expression on her face, and she is just, and when she runs, her dumb, wet, flappy jaws, and there's nothing to like about this dog. And here's why. Because you send her out in the pasture with 3 dogs, and 2 of them know what they're doing, and she doesn't. She sees no difference. Listen, no difference whatsoever between what they're doing and what she's doing. She's like, we're just running around barking and running at the steers, right? I'm a cow dog. So you got all the steers coming to you, and then you've got her. Well, they don't know the difference. They don't know which one bites and which one doesn't. They just see dogs, and like the one bites a lot. And so they see a dog, and they're like, yeah. And then they're running now away from her, and she's like, I'm doing it. So I was having this conversation with Lacey the other day, and like when you call her, you're like, Doughnut, come here. She'll look at you, and she'll be like, oh, not yet. It's not her happiness that I hate. It's all the things that she's doing wrong. She's just in the way, but she's not wired to understand why. And like in her mind, I'm the happy police, and she's just too happy to deal with me at the moment. So the other day, we're not recording this. I cannot tell you how happy I am that we're not recording this. The other day, we're gonna unwrap steers, and so we bring all the steers up, and I'll let the dogs out to gather them, and Lacey's gonna be helping me. And here's Lacey, ready? Jordan, you love Doughnut. I don't. I'm not confused. No, I don't. Look at her. And she's like, it's like stupid hairy face. And she's like, Jet loves her. And I'm like, that's the only thing keeping her alive. So I'm constantly catching crap from Lacey, like, she's such a sweet dog. You love her. And I'm like, so we're gathering steers the other day, and Lacey's gonna be pushing steers into the chutes and helping me take wraps off. And so I let Doughnut go. I let Doughnut out. Let me just tell you guys something. She may lie and deny what I'm about to tell you, but your pastor's wife hasn't forgotten all of the naughty words. Y'all, this Lacey Weaver is screaming to the point her voice is cracking. She's yelling so hard that like her voice cracks into silence. So it sounds like Doughnut is 2 words. She's like, she's just screaming. And I come walking up calmly, and I go, Lacey. And I mean, like, she's got gills. She's so mad. Just, Lacey. We love Doughnut. It was great. It was one of those moments where she was so mad she didn't care that I was right. Because what Doughnut does is she doesn't know the job. She doesn't get it. And so she just runs around, and she's excited, and she's like, I'm a cow dog. And she'll bark at the steers, and right about the time a steer gets ready to go in the chute, she's like, there's one about to get away. And she just runs and blocks it. And like, it is like she's literally, I swear to you, it's like she's actively working against you. I didn't even want to preach about her. That's how much I don't like her. I don't want to honor her life with giving her a reference in a sermon. And the fact that she sees no difference between what she's doing and what they're doing, to the point that even my other dogs are like, I had a moment the other day, and here's why I had to tell you the donut story. First, to tattle on my wife. But second of all, I had a moment where she's looking at me the other day, and she's been running through them. She's so happy. She's just so incurably happy. I'm like, donut. And she's like, oh, no, I can't come to you. And I'm sitting there, and I'm watching her, and what I realize is that, this is hard to even, this is not joking. I'm telling you the honest truth. There's a moment where I'm like, I don't want to admit this about myself, but how many times have I examined my surroundings as a person, and I swear God showed it to me, and I had this moment. I was like, I reject that. I don't want to learn that yet. Where you examine life around you, and you completely miss what's true about yourself. There is blind spots that we all have in our lives where we examine what's going on in life and we completely miss what is true. Because when you walk into a room, the only thing you can't see is what? Yourself. And so there's these Jesus moments, and one of the things I've said about Shiloh that I'm so confident in is that we exist to create a simple path to Jesus. That's it. Jesus does amazing things in people's lives when the two come together, and I love watching what Jesus does with people because like this, Jesus shows me this dog that I'm just wanting to strangle, and he's like, you're kind of like that. Nobody could have said that to me in a way that Jesus said it to me. But what he did was he showed me something about myself that I didn't want to see. We're not recording it, so she'll never see it. I had a cousin when I was a little kid, and she was just kind of a wreck. She was kind of a mess. Kind of still is. And she would get all dressed up, and she was living with us. We were little kids, and she was probably 19 or 20, and she would get all dressed up, and she'd get her makeup all done, and she'd get her hair all done, and then she'd walk out, and even as little kids, like the back of her hair looked like a chicken's butt. You know what I'm talking about? She didn't do it on purpose. It wasn't like the Karen do on purpose. It was like she just forgot. Mine does it a little bit. And I think when I think about my cousin and I think about my life, I just wonder what parts of my hair can everybody see that I don't see? And I think sometimes when you start to examine this concept of Jesus and self, we get really confused because we can't see what's true about our own lives. Am I making sense? Can we at least agree, by a show of hands, and I don't do this very often, but for the sake of just conversation, by a show of hands, could we at least consider the possibility that we have blind spots that exist in our lives that we cannot see? Well, can we exist that that's possible? We're kind of halfway there then. Again, this church exists to make a simple path to Jesus. Well, the only way we're going to do that is by making sure that people not in a church setting have access the best that we can. Now, it's up to them. There's personal buy-in and things like that. But one of the things that I know to be true about people that are outside of a Jesus concept is they have a universal concept that if Jesus were to engage with them, the first thing he's going to do is tell them how upset he is about their sin. Right? It's like I think people sometimes avoid Jesus in general because, like stupid Doughnut, we're like, well, if I go to Jesus, the fun ends and he's going to be mad at me. Instantly, Jesus exists in the world to tell us about our sin. And here's what is so intriguing to me. Jesus doesn't do that. When people have a Jesus experience, they do it first. Clean slate for a second. I know I've talked a lot about a lot, but clean slate. How many times do you know people who they consider Jesus and the first thing that happens is their sin is right in the front of their consciousness? Well, I mean, I'm not a perfect person. Well, why do you even say that? Nobody assumed that you were. Well, I mean, I made a few mistakes. Like, wait. Jesus didn't say that. I'm not saying that. We as people, we have this concept that Jesus is more interested in our sin than I think he actually is. Listen to this. We're not even into the sermon yet. This is why I only got to a third of my notes. I got all fired up talking about a stupid little brown dog. Luke chapter 5, verse 8 says that Peter, he'd been a fisherman his whole life. He knew everything there was to know about fishing in the day. And it says that Jesus has this moment and they bring in so many fish and all of a sudden Jesus goes, you're not like us. You're different. You are this holy figure, this Jesus moment. And when Simon Peter saw this, he fell at Jesus' knees and says, go away from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man. the commentaries all agree there's no way someone made that up. If you're writing a story about Jesus and his followers, you don't include that. You see what I mean? It's too counterintuitive, because if Peter was a fisherman and he meets somebody who's really good at catching fish, the natural response is, hey, what do you got going on the next little while? Do you want a job? You want to do that thing that you do? This wouldn't have existed yet, right? But he doesn't say that. He says, you've got to get away from me, because I am this gross thing, and I'm afraid of what I'm going to see when you show me to myself. This is where it's all going into our laps. This is like if each individual, we're not sitting at a table this morning, we're sitting at an individual desk, and this truth has to be set on your personal desk. I can't set it on your family's desk. I can't put it on your gender's desk. I can't put it on your race's desk. I can't put it on any other desk than you personally. This truth has to go directly onto your desk, is that Peter said, I'm afraid of what you'll discover if you show me who I am. It is so much easier to name your sin than to discover your own name. If you're taking notes, it is so much easier and less painful, honestly. It's less painful to name your sin than to discover your own name. And what I mean by that is this. There's these jets, and they, this is kind of bizarre, but follow me. There's these jets, and they're flying through the air, and they'll fire heat-seeking missiles from the ground. Has anybody ever seen this? And so what do? They'll deploy these flares, and these flares carry so much heat that the idea is that the missile that's coming for the airplane will follow one of these flares. Does everybody understand this concept? I think sometimes the confession of sin that we make such a priority is like us sending out these flares to distract from God ever getting in contact with us. We're like, okay, just take what you want. I get it. I'm bad. I'm gross. I'm a sinner. I messed up. I'm an adulterer. I'm an addict. I'm name the sin. And we're like, yeah, that's me. Got it. Okay, great. There goes the flare. Go, Jesus. Go get it. The problem is this. I can't remember where I read this, but if you fall off a bridge right at the very beginning of the bridge, you land in the gravel. Is everybody sticking with me so far? Like if you fall off a bridge, the bridge isn't dangerous until you get out in towards the middle of the bridge. Because once you get out in the middle of the bridge, if you fall off out there, the fall is much greater. And I think sometimes that we are willing to go, yeah, Jesus, great, good, sin, got it, great, because we know that we're still in the safe zone. But if we were to start looking further into who is Jesus and who am I, the problem is the fall gets really deep really quickly. Because what we realize is we are masters at disguising self. Here's the verse. This is the verse. If you're taking notes, this is the verse that we're just going to kind of circulate around today. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10 says, we are God's handiwork. Hard stop. Not people in general, including the bad ones. It says we at a specific level is God's handiwork. That means when God put you together, he took great care to put you together in exactly the way that he wanted you put together. The world will take that away, and they will give you all sorts of different confusing things that define self. God says, no, you're my handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works. This is my favorite part of this verse, which God prepared in advance for us to do. Remember, you're not sitting at a table, you're sitting at a desk. And if God were to put this sermon on your desk, he would say, I created you, with a specific purpose. And the answer, honestly, if you really dig into it, if you go far enough out into this bridge, what you realize is, I don't even know what that means when you say you, because I don't even know who I am. I don't know what I am. I'm kind of like my surroundings tell me that I'm this, or my politics tell me I'm kind of like this, or my friends tell me that I'm kind of like this. And if you took all that away, I'm not really sure what's left. God says, but Ephesians says he created you, and he created works for you to accomplish in your lifetime, and he created them before you ever existed. Don't go too far down into that thought. It gets deep quickly. You can glance at it. It's not that scary. But when you dig into it, that means that God built you with a specific purpose. Now, I had a lady that worked on my hips back in 2014. My hips were just shot. Turns out I'm part German Shepherd. My hips were so bad off because for years I did something my hips were not designed to do. There's a discouragement in that. Anybody ever been there? Just not quite pretty enough, you're not quite wealthy enough, you don't have the right job, you don't have the right address, you don't have the right whatever. I felt that at a deep level because growing up, really, all I wanted to do was rope calves. Life could have been so much simpler for me. All I wanted to do was rope calves. And you're like, that sounds stupid. I agree. But I wasn't built to do the thing that I wanted to do. And she said this. She said, have you ever considered that God gave you a shell that came fully equipped to do what he designed you to do, but it may not be fully equipped for you to do what you want to do? I'm like, yeah, think about that a lot. I know that. I'm a pastor. I'm very spiritual. Can we just kind of let that set for a second? That you, as you sit in a brown or a white chair, you sit fully equipped to accomplish something that only you can accomplish, that God set out in front of you, and you are sitting there fully equipped. And how many of you would say, I feel like the enemy has distracted me from that? I feel less than, I feel inferior, I feel like I'm way too much this way or not enough that way. I feel like a bird dog chasing steers. I don't really get this game. I don't understand, like my surroundings are confusing and I'm the dumbest one and I don't like me. Anybody ever said that? I don't like me. It's not life that I have a problem with. I'm what I have a problem with. Can I just say this? If it was just sin, if it was just that Jesus, you come to Jesus and he's like, you're a sinner. And you're like, I know. He's like, okay, you're forgiven. Now what? No, that's all. That's it. If God just wanted a sinless space that's roughly your size, you know what he could have done? Not created you at all in the first place. You could have never sinned. You could have never made a mistake. You could have never screwed up had you never existed. You're like, well, but I do. Exactly. But you do. I've never been alive in a year where people push against that concept that they exist. And if they exist, even with the screw-ups, even with the mess-ups, there is a purpose, there is a plan, and you are equipped and fully prepared, maybe not for your goals, maybe not for your plans, but for the plans he has for you. God's interest in you is not sin-centric. I actually think sometimes that we go to Jesus and we're like having fun and we're running around and we're just chasing steers and then all of a sudden we're like, I'm a failure and why am I not as pretty as my friends and why don't I have as much money as my friend? And then you go to Jesus and you get to Jesus and instead of being like, Jesus, where do I go? You get to Jesus and it's human nature. We get to Jesus and we're like, thy Father, Jesus, who's in heaven. Have you ever considered that sometimes Jesus is like, God, you're so boring. Wake up. What is wrong with you? I'm not mad at you because you're happy. You're just in the wrong spot. If you'll let me, I'll let you go bird hunt. Like, be happy. Wake up. Happiness is not the problem. Your being happy is not what Jesus is trying to fix. Can I scream that one more time? Like, you being happy is not the problem. And yet when we go to God, we're like, okay. Okay, God, I am a terrible person. And God's like, nope. That's not where we start at all. Does that not trigger some level of happiness for you? That you're, let me say it this way. Fruits of the Spirit. The result of being engaged in a relationship with Jesus, your life will produce love. Everyone knows it. We know that somewhere we're missing this concept of self. Somewhere we have accepted that we're broken or that we're flawed or that we're less than. And Jesus is like, where is the joy? Why is it every time somebody in church considers the concept of self, we get sad? Shouldn't be that way. So we say, away from me, I'm a sinful man. I think there are thousands of ways that people imagine their lives going. That's why we love stories. My little boy one time, he came walking in, and for you guys that haven't seen him lately, he's not cuddly anymore at all. And you're like, Jet was never cuddly. I mean, like, he's this big thing. It's like, I told Lacey, I'm like, I feel like I'm living in the house with, like, a smelly adult. He comes walking in one time. He's 3 years old, and he's got all this stuffed animals and pillows stuffed under his shirt. And he didn't walk in, like, rah, like you'd expect. He just comes casually, if you know Jet. He just comes casually walking in. Hey, what's up, Jet? He's like, hey, stronger now. I go, what's that? He's like, stronger now. And then he says this, I could probably pick up that couch. Go for it. Yeah, try it. He's like, later. My little philosopher. But that's why we love stories. That's why we love movies. That's why we love books. It's because we get to imagine ourselves as the hero, or like maybe we connect to the villain. But when you hear stories, what happens is the truths of life start to come to the surface, and we imagine ourselves differently maybe than what is reality. It's pretty common that we imagine ourselves in all these different characters. And back to Kierkegaard again. Kierkegaard said people outsource self. Somebody were to ask you, like, what is your morality? What is your moral scale? We have this tendency to go, well, my pastor teaches. And you're like, wait a minute. That is like shoving things up your shirt to be like muzzly, but it doesn't affect what's true about you. We've just outsourced our appearance. We like the appearance of being put together. Listen, nobody wants to be seen as the wreck that they actually are. Nobody wants to be seen as having crumbs on their computer. Everybody wants to have this appearance. We outsource. Have you ever known somebody that it's like they take being a fan of something a little too serious? I mean, I'm a Cowboys fan. I don't really have like a lot of room to talk. But when you meet somebody that's just super into something, hey, how's it going? I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan. You're like, okay. Dak Prescott is my quarterback. And you're like, please don't make us suffer through Dallas Cowboys stuff. Just hear me. You know people like this, that when the Dallas Cowboys do good, they do good. Why? Because they've outsourced their success to the success of something external. They've taken self and they've attached it to something else. And we do the same thing with stuff more virtuous. Well, I'm a dad. Well, that's great, except that if you don't know who you are, you don't know what you're bringing to that role. See, we outsource self. We outsource our morality. Well, I go to this church. Well, I go to this Republican Party. Well, I go to this Democratic Party. Is that too soon? Are we allowed to talk about politics yet? We outsource self because we're afraid that when we discover self, we are this gross, useless thing, and the Bible is the only place we can go to combat that concept. It's a transaction in a sense. It's like Dumbo's feather. Do you remember the story of Dumbo? He was so uncertain in life, and life had brought him to a place of such uncertainty. He needed something to cling to, and somebody introduced this idea of a feather, and he discovered truths about himself. But as he's discovering the truth about himself, he's attributing those to what? The feather. That's how idolatry works, is that we attribute so much of our self-concept to external things, to the point that if those external things disappear, there's nothing left of us. There's nobody sitting at our desk. Have you ever heard the joke that a CrossFitter and a vegan walk into a bar? Nobody asked, they just volunteered it. Got some CrossFitters? Sorry. You see sometimes where people make like their thing their identity. And apart from that thing, there's a way to never eat any animal products ever. Remember, never exist. See what I mean? Like there is this battle between existing and non-existing, and we're making the argument that it is better that you exist. I am arguing on your behalf. It is better that you exist, even with the mess ups, but you are not these external things. Because here's the problem. If you only exist in these external things, you could disappear entirely. Has anybody ever been, I know this is a random example, but has anybody ever been to the Cheesecake Factory? And you walk in and they hand you this novel and they go, we have all of these things and we'll be back in 27 seconds. Let us know what you want. You're like, they got 10,000 things. I don't know what. Oh, all of it? Can you order? I don't know. They come back and you're like, I'm not even close to done. I got so many options. There's so many things I want. That philosophy argues that too many options is the same. It's actually more paralyzing than zero options. Because if you were to sit down and they were to go, we have nothing for you to eat, you'd leave. But if they sit down and they go, we have everything, you order nothing because, yeah. You with me? That's what I like about the cowboy dinner tree. They're like, beef or chicken? What else do you have? No, beef or chicken. And they say the likelihood of you being satisfied with your choice goes down when you had too many other options, because no matter what you settle on, you're like, oh, shit, I got the other thing. When it's like beef or chicken, you're like, never chicken. What, am I a vegan? We're growing up in a generation that has lost itself. It's lost the concept of self. It's lost the value of self. We've lost Ephesians 2:10 off of our scope because we've been told you can be anything. I hate to rip the Band-Aid off, but that is just not true. You can't be anything you want. And it's not really until the you can be anything that you want dies that you can discover what you actually really are. Because there's no real difference functionally between you can be anything or you could be everything. Oof. You ready for a mind bender? That by trying to be everything, you effectively become nothing. That when you watch a movie and you're like, maybe I'm this guy, maybe I'm that guy, maybe I'm like this person, maybe I'm like this girl, maybe I'm, you're paralyzed. You become paralyzed, like sitting there with too many options on the menu, and you go, I don't know what I am. I don't know who I am. I don't know when to say yes. I don't know when to say no. I don't know when to get involved. I don't know when to pull back. And you become this person that's just donut, just, yeah. And God's like, come here. He's like, I can't. I'm trying to figure out what I am. And God's like, where's he going to go? Am I doing it right? Not at all, not even close. There's functionally no difference between saying that you can be everything and saying that you are nothing. That is what a generation is being raised, being told. You are nothing. You're a gender, you're a race, you're a class, you're a political party, but you don't exist. All of those things will continue to exist when you're gone. Think of this. Think of the depression that would develop in the lives of young people who are being told every single day, you are nothing, you don't exist, and the world won't miss you. It's way more depressing when you think of it in those terms. Back to Kierkegaard for a second. Kierkegaard said that anxiety, how many times do you hear that word now? You know one word I never heard my grandpa say ever, never. My grandpa died at 81. He was born in 1930. He grew up during the Depression, was a farmer, was a racetrack jockey. My grandpa I've told you this, he would rope wild horses out in the Cap Rocks of southwestern Colorado. He would snub them up, choke them down, him and his brother, when they're like 12 and 13 years old, get on them, ride them to the reservation, and sell them that day as broke horses. True story. You know one word I never heard my grandpa say? Anxiety. If I told my grandpa, I really don't know the answer to this because I never did it. But if I told my grandpa, like, Grandpa, I just have anxiety. It might have killed him. He might have just been like. Kierkegaard said, anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. It is having so many choices that you become dizzy and you don't know what to do because you're afraid if I choose this, I'm missing out on that. I'm missing out on this, I'm missing out on that. Someone who is suffering from the dizziness of freedom needs Jesus. No matter how difficult it is, we need Jesus to show up and go, here's who I am. Oh, yeah, okay. Here's who you are. I used to teach, I've taught this sermon before, I'll probably mention it again, that I used to say that like the arrow, the further you pull the arrow back, like, you pull it way back in the stress of that when you let it go, that's how much further the arrow goes. I've taught that, and I don't even believe it anymore. I think when you pull that back far enough that the bow eventually breaks, then you're closer to finding out what direction God wants you to go, because there's this assumption like the arrow's supposed to go that way, and God goes, until that bow breaks, I can't take you where I need you to go. Have you ever known something? We're almost out of time. Okay, I'm sorry. I want to be serious for just a second and consider the logic behind what I'm going to say. That if too many options causes paralysis, that eventually a choice brings freedom. This choice to follow Jesus brings a freedom that says, I am willfully sacrificing everything that I am not. I am willfully sacrificing all the experiences that were not, for me. I'm giving up the godness of my life to the God of my life. I am going to set down what I've considered as possible. I'm setting it all down. And God, just show me who I am. Take me where you want me to go. Let me, the logic of what I'm about to say, as tragic as it is, at least makes sense. If you've been tracking the suicide rates in the U.S. over the course of the last year, we've got a problem. Where people have outsourced so much of themselves and their opinions and their morality and their relationships, and then those things are taken away, and what they realize is there's no one sitting at their desk. And the logic says, well, then what difference does it make if I live or die? The world will be unaffected if I'm gone from it. And Jesus is pleading with us in the word to consider, wait a minute. I have this whole life planned out, specifically created just for you, and you are fully equipped for it, and you are fully capable of doing what I've created you to do. The world will not teach you that. Your surroundings will not teach you that. It's like you hear Jesus just calling to us, going, stop, just stop for a second. Can I prepare you for something that nobody really likes? In your lifetime, you will probably see your dreams be crushed. See, we live in America where we feel like that's fatal because we are the result of our dreams. Your goals, your image will probably fall apart right in front of you at some point. At some point, everything that you placed yourself into will fall apart. And you're going to have that moment where you have to decide, is life worth living according to who God created me to be, or do I want out? See, I think that's the problem. It's not that our dreams fall apart. It's that when they do, we feel like life is over. It's like we weren't prepared for this reality that in trying to be everything, we, in essence, become nothing. And Ephesians chapter 10 says, wait a minute, you're not the creator. There's such a peace, people, there is such a peace in not being the creator. I'm so grateful. Can you imagine? I can't even control my own life. I'm not even really good at managing my own stuff. I've got crumbs on my computer. Can you imagine if it was up to me to try to run your life? This church is not your morality. This church is not your virtue. This church is not what makes you you. You being you is what makes this church what it is. And Ephesians chapter 10 says that when you show up, God goes, I needed you here specifically. The world needs you in it. The world is better with you existing, even with your screw-ups, than not existing at all. If God just didn't want your screw-ups to exist, you wouldn't have been created in the first place. Are we following the logic? Imagine that moment. Boy, please understand I'm uncomfortable because of how stupid and how much I hate this dog, and I'm giving her actually kind of a heavy moment in the service. But can you imagine that moment where you get taken out of what you are not and placed directly into what you are? Can you imagine the peace and the trust and the anxiety that would just dissipate, and this excitement for life that says, wait a minute, I'm not underprepared. I'm not under-equipped. I am fully prepared. I am fully equipped to live a life of production. Like I said, I can't promise you that your dreams are going to come true. I can almost promise you that they won't. I would be a terrible salesperson for Disney. Oh, your dreams? Buckle up, princess. There's only one princess per country. What if the king had two daughters? Let's not argue the semantics. I guess my point is, we're living in this you can be anything thing, and what I'm saying is we don't want to be everything. You don't want to be everything. You don't want every experience. You don't want every opportunity. You don't want more from Jesus. Can I close it with this? You are not needing more from Jesus. Probably what would make your life come into focus is not needing more from Jesus. It would be the willingness to accept less from Jesus. Let's pray. Lord, imagine a sermon that ends with us praying for less. But God, I think sometimes we struggle with this paralysis that comes as a direct result of being too fragmented, outsourcing all of our life to so many other areas that we don't see the value of self at all. God, that we take more identity from the table that we're sitting at instead of the desk that we're sitting at. God, that individually, when you find us and you show us ourselves, that's a hard thing because, Lord, we are almost never what we imagine that we are. But God, we're so much healthier operating in the truth of who you say we are than in the image we've tried to create. God, I know that it's been kind of a lighthearted service, but I pray for the people that are living in just destroyed self-images this morning. God, for the hearts that have been broken, for the images that have fallen apart, for the people that have struggled to find value. Lord, my heart goes out to a nation of people that so desperately need to know that they're loved and they're specifically called to a purpose, that they're capable of being someone that they didn't realize they could be. Lord, my heart goes out to that specific group of people. Lord, at the brokenhearted, the suffering, the people who came in here needing to know that you have a plan and a purpose. We're asking you for less. I pray in Jesus' name, amen.